Okay, it's session 36 of Tool Time Tuesday. I'm going to talk a little bit about predatory journals. We're going to give you an Office 365 tip of the week, and I'm going to talk about some tools and tips for publishing. I wanted to mention I found out this past week, I was in a meeting, the notice that pops up when you record to let the audience know you're recording, that's now been defaulted for the institution. So you don't have to worry about setting that notice. Everyone's notified when you start recording. I just thought that was a nice thing for them to default because I think it's nice to let people know you're recording. My name is Larissa Gann. I'm from the Research Medical Library, and my co-host is Leslie Moore. Also from the library, you can contact us anytime. Find us on our website at mdanderson.org/library. We have lots of wonderful library staff to help you. I wanted to mention that this week is Education Week, and there's tons of great events going on. Today, there's a poster competition and showcase. And so if you want to check that out, it's all virtual. I'm going to show you what it looks like. You can vote for your favorite poster between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. So you may have like a coworker or a colleague that has a poster in the poster competition today, so you want to be sure to check it out and vote. But there's lots of other great events going on, classes, sessions, so check out the calendar and I'll send you the link to the full calendar as well. I wanted to mention that as part of this new poster session, we're sort of doing a soft launch of this new tool that we have in the library called OpenWorks. What OpenWorks is it's a collection, it's a place where we can collect materials and scholarship created by MD Anderson students, faculty, and staff. It's a public-facing website where we can put things like posters and class materials, things like that, to make our work visible, promote our work, and preserve it. So it doesn't just sort of get lost in the shuffle of everything. So these posters for Education Week are up on OpenWorks today, and you can check them out. I will send you this link afterwards. All right, so we wanted to start with a spot and verify. We've decided we're going to do this regularly because we think it's important, how to be your own detective. And this week, we're going to talk about predatory journals. So predatory journals, or sometimes they're called predatory publishers. We also use the word suspicious or problematic, but what these journals do is they solicit publications from faculty, researchers, authors. They charge you a fee for the publication, but they don't provide proper peer review or editing services. So their goal is just to take your money, and what they do with your manuscript, you don't always know. So what they don't do is they don't index your article in a major database like PubMed or Medline or Scopus. So they may take it and put it somewhere on the internet, but it's not necessarily findable in a place like PubMed. They don't provide appropriate peer review or editorial services. So these are really important when we're publishing, that our articles are peer reviewed and that they're edited properly, reviewed properly. They don't market your article in any way. So this is part of the publication process, is that they should be marketing your article through Twitter, Facebook, different ways. Sometimes they even steal your intellectual property and they try to publish your articles under their name or under a different name. So there's a lot at stake here. What they do is they'll charge you a fee. Sometimes they'll charge the fee multiple times, or they'll change the cost multiple times, and then they don't necessarily publish your article for you. So that's what a predatory journal is. They're shady journals that take your money and then they don't actually publish your article officially appropriately. I do want to point out that open access journals are not the same thing as predatory journals. Open access journals do charge a fee, but they provide appropriate peer review and editorial services. So if you have a question about a journal, whether it's predatory, you can always ask the library. So how do we spot these predatory journals? So usually they send you an email. So the first thing you want to ask yourself, just like with the phishing email, is, have you heard of this journal before? If you think you've heard of it, ask a colleague, have they heard of it before? If you haven't heard of it before, then you want to stop and check and make sure it's not predatory. Ask the library, we can double check for you. If you've heard of the journal before, just make sure that it's indexed in the places you want it to be. Like, is it going to show up in PubMed? Is it going to show up in the major databases? Because that's important, right? You want to get credit for it. Also, make sure the journal scope matches the scope of your manuscript. So a lot of these predatory journals will contact you, and then their journal doesn't even match like the scope of your research, so it doesn't make sense. Look for clues, like, is the email well written? They often have spelling errors, poor grammar. Is there even an editor that signed their name to it? Does their website have a fuzzy logo, too many ads, things like that? If they're asking for a fee, just double check and make sure it's listed. You can check an open access journal should be listed on the DOAJ website. This is a good place to check. They vet the journals to make sure that they're legitimate. The last place you can check is, when you're in doubt, is we have something called the Cable's Predatory Reports list. So this is a list of potentially predatory journals. If the journal's on this list, then I would say don't go for it. If you're still not sure, just ask the librarian, will help you check. So the two places someone asked if there's a list, the first is the DOAJ lets you know if it's a good journal or if it's a vetted journal at least. Cable's predatory list lets you know for sure if it's been flagged as a predatory journal. It's like a blacklist. All right. If you suspect a journal is predatory, you can always forward the email to us in the library. We can investigate it for you. If we find it to be predatory, we will report it to InfoSec if we find that it's appropriate. We do have a series of methods for determining this, and we can also just give you advice on it as well. So please let us know. So I want to give you an Office 365 tip of the week. This is one that Leslie and I were working on, so we thought we'd let you know. When you are adding comments to a document using OneDrive, this is a really cool feature that you can use in OneDrive. Is we can work on the same Word document or PowerPoint at the same time, but how do you know that person's actually working on it? So when you want to add comments, you can just open up the document. And in this case, I'm looking at office.com, but I'm going to show you the desktop version too. When you're on office.com, you have a document in OneDrive. You just have to share it with your colleague or multiple colleagues. And then you could start adding comments at any time. You could also just add comments for yourself as well. But if you want to share them, you just go to right click on the document and select new comment. And then you can add a comment in there like, hey, Leslie, can you double check this for me? Or do I need more information here? Whatever the comment is. For the person reviewing the comments in the document, you can open the document again from office.com. You can click on the comments button. There's in the upper right-hand corner, there's this little bubble and icon, and then it says comments, and a pane will open up for you on the right. What we did notice on the online version is there's sometimes you can't find the first comment immediately, but there's always this little link that says go to first comment, and it'll take you to the first comment that somebody has made in the slide deck or in the Word document. So that's just a little tip there, is go to first comment. If you're using the desktop version, you can do basically the same thing. You'll open up a document on your desktop. In this case, it's a PowerPoint, but it could be a Word doc. Share it with whomever you want to share it with, and then you can right click and make comments on it. For anyone who wants to review the comments, you can always click on the comments tab in the upper right-hand corner or button, and the comments pane will pop open for you, and you can navigate to the comments with these little bubbles. If you hover over them, they say previous and next for comments, so you can navigate forward and backwards in the comments. But that's how you add a comment. That's how you see the comments. They can be really helpful when you're working on a document with someone that you can, instead of sending 1,000 emails or having to meet every single time, you can add comments for one another. So how do you know if someone else is working on the document? Like, where are they in this document? You do receive an email notification when your collaborator adds a comment. So that's nice. If they're working on it one day, it will notify you and let you know that there is a comment there. It is a little slow. It's not instantaneous. So keep that in mind. We did notice that Leslie would add a comment, and then it may take 10 minutes before I got the email that she added the comment. So if you're actively working in the document though, and you may have noticed this before, They do give you indicators that your collaborator is in the document, and I put some little screenshots here. What they have is this little silhouette icon in the slide pane for PowerPoint, but you see it in the Word document as well. It's like a little color bubble. In the online version, it is a little circle, and if you click on it, it shows their full name, who's working on it, where they're at in the document. In the desktop version, it's a little square icon. It is weird that the person's middle and last initial show up. I'm not sure why that is, but you can hover over them to see who's working on it. Okay, so Norma said, in the cell, you can add their name and assign a task to them, and they'll receive an email notification. Oh, that's awesome. I'll have to try assigning a task to someone. Awesome. So this kind of takes some getting used to, navigating it, getting used to, but it works pretty smoothly. And I like that I can see if someone's in the document when I'm working on it. All right. So sort of the meat of what I wanted to talk about today are some tools for publishing. The reason I thought about this is because I'm getting more and more questions around some of this. So I wanted to highlight some of the tools and resources available for that. And I think this applies to us whether we're publishing or whether we're supporting someone who's publishing. So I just made a list of the things. So when I send this out later, you can click on one of these and it'll take you directly to the slide where we discuss this specific publishing tool. As a bonus tip to let you know, there is a way to link to another slide in the same PowerPoint presentation, and I gave you a link on how to do that. So if you click on one of these, it would take you directly to the slide, and I'll send that out afterwards. But the first thing I wanted to mention was copyright for images and figures. So when you're publishing, sometimes you want to reuse someone else's image or figure. We can't just take it, copy and paste it and put it in our paper because that is against copyright law. So we have to get permission to reuse it. So this has come up a lot lately. I guess a lot of people are publishing. So the way that you get permission to do this, you can't just email the author and say, hey, can I use this? Because the journal usually owns it. So what you'll do is you'll search for the article on their journal website. And you've probably noticed before, they almost always have a rights and permissions link. It's in a different place on every journal website. But if you click on rights and permissions, it's going to send you to something called the Copyright Clearance Center. The Copyright Clearance Center is going to ask you a series of questions, and then the publisher is going to let you know how much it costs to reuse that image or figure. It almost always costs money. So keep that in mind. We can't just copy an image, but we can ask for rights or permissions to reuse it. And there is usually a cost to it. One thing that came up recently that I thought was really cool is that we did that same thing here. We found the article, we clicked on rights and permissions. The difference was that the article had been published in an open access model, publishing model. And so when we clicked on that, the publisher allowed us, sent us to this little section of text and basically said, you can reuse this as long as you cite it and put the little Creative Commons license next to it. So this was kind of magical. There's no money involved because the authors originally published open access. We're allowed to reuse the figures and tables in another publication as long as we cite it appropriately and link to the Creative Commons license. So if you get to a paragraph like this and you're confused or you're overwhelmed or you want just backup on what it means, you can ask the library and we can help you interpret what the license means and make sure you're using it appropriately. One quick reminder, there is a difference between using a figure or a table for a publication versus using it in a presentation. So the rights and permissions for presentations are a lot looser, but I could always guide you to the correct information on that as well. So that's in essence how to use, get permission for images and figures. If you want to learn how to, or figure out how to choose a journal or make sure you're choosing the right journal, we have a tool called Pubs Hub that helps you do this. I think this is like a really awesome tool. So PubsHub allows you to search for a journal, and then it gives you lots of information on the journal. So things like, what is the impact factor of it? What are the acceptance and rejection rates? What's the circulation? Like, how many people are going to actually read this? What language is it in? And there's a lot more. So you can go to PubsHub and you can search based on a journal title or just based on some different categories. And it will give you tons of information on the journal, so to help you choose which journal is the right journal for you. So check out PubsHub if you're interested. One other thing that comes up a lot, and it's been around for a little while, but it's gotten bigger and bigger, is this thing called ORCID. So an ORCID is an open researcher and contributor ID. This is a unique ID that authors are apply for and receive. I always kind of explain it sort of like in publishing. It's kind of like having a social security number for your publications. It's one number that you use for all your publications. The purpose of the ORCID is that it helps identify your publications as yours and no one else's. So each author has to create their own ORCID. You only have to create it once, and that's it. You probably want to go back and update it at least once a year, but you can go to orcid.org and you can create a free profile. You can use your MD Anderson email or your personal email, or you can use both. You want to be sure to add your current position in ORCID, so that we know that if your name is common, like John Smith, that we know you're our John Smith from the Department of, Radiation Oncology, wherever it is. So you want to put your current employment, but you can put all your past employment as well. One of the other important pieces of this is to add your works. And what they mean by works is just your publications. They want you to add all your publications to ORCID so we can make sure that we can identify which ones are yours. So when you add your works to ORCID, you can do this with, we call this automagically instead of automatically, it's automagically. You go to orcid.org. Once you have your account created, you just log in, and there's an add works section in ORCID. They have an option to search and link. And then they give you a bunch of things to choose from, but the best one to choose from is Scopus. So what we're going to do is choose Scopus. And then it's going to send us through this little wizard that makes us select a few things like, is this your name? Are you sure it's your name? Are these your publications? Are you sure they're your publications? Once you do that, you can just enter your email address, and there's a button that says send author ID, and it will connect all your publications to your ORCID. You don't have to do manual entry to add all your publications. Does this make sense so far? Does anyone have questions so far? Book chapters. Okay, so only authors need to have an ORCID. So anytime you publish, you want to have an ORCID, or if you're expecting to publish at some point in the near future, you want to have an ORCID ID. For book chapters, you can do this search and link, and you can choose Crossref. Crossref is another option in ORCID, and you can search for your book chapter or your books and link them that way as well. So there's lots of different options for adding publications. Most of yours should be from Scopus, but there are things like books and book chapters that may not be there. You can also add things in manually that maybe weren't published in a major database as well. Okay, one of the reasons this is important for publishing, you may be asking that, and I forgot to mention it, but that most major publishers and funders are asking you for an ORCID. So you want to be prepared when that happens. And you'll notice on some of these publications now, this is from the Journal of Clinical Oncology, there's a little green icon next to the author's names. This links directly to their ORCID profile. So if somebody wanted to say, maybe I want to collaborate with this person or talk to them a bit more, I can click on their ORCID ID and see their full profile. So that's part of it, is to connect you and your readers to your work. Okay, so someone asked about CINAHL. So CINAHL is a major nursing database. I don't know if CINAHL is included in ORCID. I would have to check that. but most everything that's in CINAHL should be included in Scopus as well. Scopus and Crossref are the two top ones that I would use, but I can double check on CINAHL. Good question. The next thing I wanted to remind you about, and I've gotten more questions about this lately, is giving credit. So when we have lots of authors on a publication, it's important to keep track of who's an author, who should be acknowledged. And there are different roles in doing a manuscript, creating a manuscript, tons of roles. So there are some guidelines from this group called the ICJME that define like what are the specific roles of an author versus a contributor. There's also the scientific publication policy from the institution, which is a little hard to find, I think, but this is the number if you want to search on Inside for it. The best tool I've found for this is called Credit. So Credit is this tool that just creates what they call a taxonomy for contributor roles. It lets you know like what are the possible contributors to a manuscript and make sure that you're crediting those people. So some people you might consider besides just co-authoring, but consider acknowledging are people who provide lots of administrative support, literature search assistance, technical editing, proofreading, writing assistance. There's tons of support that goes into creating a manuscript. So we just wanted to remind you that we should be sure to give appropriate authorship or co-authorship and acknowledgement. So check out the Credit one because I think that it's a good tool for that, figuring out who's who and how they contributed. You can also use a tool to review your manuscript called Authenticate. So we know that publishers are running your manuscript through a plagiarism checker. Most publishers are. They will reject your manuscript automatically if you meet a certain threshold. So if they decide that you've got too many things that aren't cited correctly, then they're just going to reject you without even looking at it. You could have the best research on the planet and they're going to reject it. So be sure to request a free Authenticate account through the library. Once you do, you'll get an email notification. You'll be able to create a private account at authenticate.com. You can upload a file to it and you can do Word docs or PowerPoints, or there's several file types, but usually it's a Word document. You just enter in the author names, the article title, upload your file. It does take a few minutes for the manuscript to process, but once it does, it gives you a report. This is a little screenshot of a report. What the report does is it highlights different sections that you may want to look at and see if you need to reword. Now, some of them are things you can't change. They're general phrases, but if you get a huge chunk of text that is all red or all one color, you might want to review it. So you can click on the highlighted sections in the report to see where the original citation came from. You can also filter, use the little filter icon, which I know is hard to see here, but there is a little filter icon, and select exclude bibliography. So it doesn't count your bibliography as duplicate text. And you can download the full report. So sometimes the publisher will ask you for the full report. It's kind of rare, but I think it does happen. Or if you just want to, you can download the full report. There's a tiny printer icon down here. You can always ask us in the library again if you can't find it. Download the full report so you can send it and share it with someone. So Authenticate just reviews for possible plagiarism. Again, we know that publishers are checking this, so we want to make sure that you're checking it first before you submit. It'll save you tons of time. Another thing that's come up a lot lately, and there's not really a tool for this, except I'm going to say the library is the tool for this, but we need to double check our funding requirements and be sure to cite our funds. This has become really, really critical. So based on the type of funds supporting the work, and by funds, I mean like NIH grants, CPRIT grants, different grants, you may have to choose an open access journal, or there's something called a green open access journal license. So why does this matter? So if we don't cite our funding when we're submitting our manuscripts, we may not get credit for the publication when we report back. So when we have to do those big reports back to NIH or CPRIT, they may ding us on it and basically say we didn't follow through the way we were supposed to. And there's money at stake. They can pull our funds from us if we don't do this correctly. So 75% of the publications we produce at MD Anderson have some sort of NIH funds attached to them. Usually the Cancer Center Support Grant is the major one. Probably many of you have heard of that one. But here's the trouble that we found recently. If you have an NCI Cancer Moonshot Fund grant, you are required, as is bolded and underlined here, you're required to publish in an open access journal. If you don't do this, you can lose your funds. And they're being extremely aggressive about following through with this. So you can use PubsHub as a tool to find out if a journal has an open access option. And again, how do you know? You can always ask the library and we can help you navigate these requirements. So be sure to cite your funding and choose the right journal to publish in, because we can lose funding, which is really, really important. This is the most critical thing I've seen lately, is that the NCI is being very aggressive about making sure that we're publishing in the right journal. So please feel free to ask. We've mentioned this before, but one great way to improve the acceptance rate of your publication, or just the quality of your publication, is to have your manuscript edited by an expert. So we have scientific editors that can edit your manuscript for clarity, grammar, cohesion, formatting, and flow. Just submit your manuscript to rml-editing@mdanderson.org, and we have more information on our website. They're super amazing, so please, feel free to have your manuscript edited. The last thing I wanted to mention here is this new thing came out on promoting your research. So some of you may have heard this. I've had quite a few of you email me about this. There's a new form that faculty or authors can use to submit a publication for the public relations team to promote. So it's brand new, so I'm still investigating this a little bit more, and I cut the text off here a little, so I'll have to fix that. But it's a form that you fill out just to say, hey, I have this new publication, I think you should promote it because it's really important. You can fill out this form and submit it, and then the public relations team will be in contact with you about it. There were a couple of questions that came from this, like who is the corresponding author? If you open the full text of the article and search for corresponding, usually there's just one author that's listed as the corresponding author. Usually their email address is there. There's this little checkbox, has this been formally accepted for publication? So it has to have been confirmed by the journal that they have accepted it for publication, and usually the authors are the first people to be notified of this. And then there's this embargo date. The embargo date, I believe, is related to whether or not you're allowed to talk about the publication publicly ahead of time before it's officially published. So I'm going to get more information on this and share it with you. So someone asked about, does the author have to submit the form, or can the delegate to this? I think if a faculty member asks you to submit it for him or her, you can do it, but you're probably going to need this extra information, like make sure it's been formally accepted, and you're going to have to figure out this embargo date, which I'm going to get more information on that for you. Good question. And the last thing, we just wanted to have a reminder today about the frustrations of working from home or with technology. Oh, I'm sorry. So my question here is, why isn't this working? So if you have a technical issue, this is just based on personal experience, don't just live with it. There's things you can do. So try crowdsourcing a solution. That's why we have teams. We can ask our colleagues if they're having the same issue at the same time. Maybe we can help each other out. Find your person. Don't be afraid to ask for help. What I mean by this is, I was having an issue last week I could not figure out for the life of me. I showed it to Leslie, and I think in about 5 minutes or less, she saw something that I didn't see, and it was fixed. So sometimes you need a second set of eyes, just someone that's willing to look at the issue with you. Don't hesitate to contact For Info. Again, my email was slow a couple weeks ago, and I just was living with it. Finally, I thought, why don't I just actually ask For Info for help? And they fixed it. It was amazing. So let them know the issue. don't give up. You don't have to live with it. Just keep communicating it. Maybe you have to describe it in a different way. One thing I've learned from Leslie as well is sometimes the person who's helping you troubleshoot, they need to be able to retrace your steps. So write your steps down for how you got to that point, whatever is happening. And you can always use Snagit. You can record or screenshot the issue and share it with the person who's helping you as well. So just a couple things. Don't just live with it, ask for help. Maybe that's obvious, but sometimes I forget, and it's a good reminder. And just two things that I thought were helpful to me in the past couple of weeks. And this was a colleague recommended this to me. There was a podcast with Brene Brown and Adam Grant on vulnerability and how important it is to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's very short. I thought it was worth listening to, so I'm sharing it. And there was a New York Times article that was mentioned in the cell meeting this past week on languishing. So not just burnout at home, but languishing. And I thought that that was really interesting. So I wanted to share that with you guys as well. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, additions? Okay, that was a ton of information. I'm going to share it with you. Lots of resources. Please, keep communicating if you have thoughts or ideas. I wanted to let you know that next week, not next week, week after next, the next tool time, there's going to be someone that's going to present on OneDrive again. So if you still have questions about OneDrive, maybe submit some questions to me ahead of time and I'll try to forward it to them. Thank you so much. Okay, don't forget to participate in the poster session today. I'm going to send it out afterwards. I'm very excited about it, so I want you guys to check it out. Thank you, thank you.
So I learned something new in this session.
Oh, what's that?
So I can turn, because I'm an alternate host, I can turn other people's videos off.
Oh, nice.
But I also can pin you, and I don't know if it worked for everybody, but I can pin you so that you always stay at the top of my list, so I don't accidentally mute you or turn your video on. Or this is nice. I've never done this one before in Zoom.
Yeah, I think that you can pin the host. So if I had my video on,
yeah, that you would stay at the top.
Right. I think so.
But I didn't know, I guess I didn't realize as an alternate host, I had some additional privileges, like being able to stop video. And
I think they've improved that a little bit too. So you probably should look at that again.
There was something that when I pinned you, that there's some new thing where we can do multiple pins.